Osio, welcome to the Red Road East. I'm your host, Fierce Truth Seeker. Yeah, so today we have a very, very interesting show with two distinguished guests, the first of which is no stranger to our studios. That guest is Brother Toriano ObaShango-El of the ThunderClan Olmec Moors. And we're also joined with Sister Dr. Fatou Diarra. And so now I will bring in Dr. ObaShango-El. ObaShango,
Greetings, greetings. How you doing?
greetings. Yeah, so just give the viewers a brief um, background information about yourself and your area of expertise, and then we'll do the same with Dr. Fatou.
Uh, my area of expertise, I'm Toriano ObaShango-El, and my area of expertise over the years, at least over the last 15 years, I'd have to say, has been the study of, within the last, I would say, 7 years, more than that, excuse me. Since 2007, I started studying the law as it pertains to indigenous peoples. But over the last 20 something years, it's been constitutional law. And within the last, I'd say, since 2014, it's been the study of anthropology, archaeology, genetics, things of that nature as it deals with the various groups of people in the land we call Amaruca or Turtle Island, or as the Moors call it, Almaricanos, and how this equates to law for national remedy. So
Oh,
that's pretty much what I've been focused on
okay.
for the last, I say, since 2007, 2014, those areas right there.
Okay. And Dr. Fatou Diarra, greetings.
Greetings, greetings. Thanks
Yeah.
for inviting me to the show.
Okay, so you're welcome. The pleasure's all mine. Give the viewers a little bit about yourself, your area of expertise, and credentials and
Oh,
background.
mm, okay. I'm a physician, medical doctor. My specialty is internal medicine, and I've been practicing now since for about 20 years, 20 plus years. Uh, my personal background, my dad is Ghanaian, and my mother is an American Aborigine from Eastern North Carolina. And I've always had interest in history. You know, I grew up with my dad teaching me all about, his people, his heritage, and that was interest to me since I was a child. But I always had this sense of emptiness with regard to my mother's side. And being that I grew up very close to both sides of my family, I couldn't help but to notice the differences. Okay, the differences were there, and I was always curious about it, and I always had a lot of questions. And my mother was born and bred in the South, so she's straight out of the South. So that Southern culture, I grew up with that as well. And we would go to family reunions, and I would speak to the elders, and I would notice not only differences in mannerisms, behavior, because I was exposed to my mom's aunts and uncles, some of who lived well into their 90s, and they had their faculties, so I was blessed to have that. I noticed also physical differences, which we'll address later on. I noticed some physical differences as well, even though these are two quote-unquote black groups, continental Africans and American blacks. There were differences that I took note of. And naturally, as I got older, as part of my training, I was exposed to sciences and things of that nature. And as I started learning more and more and more, I was able to not only look at things from a historical point of view, but I was also able to look at things from a scientific perspective as well. So that pretty much altogether brought me to where I am today.
Okay, great. Okay, so now Brother ObaShango,
Yes.
we've had you on the show before, and I'm bringing you back by popular demand.
Okay.
And because this particular topic, it is something that is hard to see. And my show is, it's only half an hour. And to cover this particular topic, it really takes much longer time. So with this show, I'm looking to pick up from where we left off before. And the reason for bringing Dr. Fatou Diarra on the show is because she adds something very interesting that complements the information that you were bringing forth before. So
Okay.
I'm going to let you, I'm going to split this time for this particular question in half between you and Sister Diarra. And I say about maybe, maybe 4 minutes each. Explain the difference between American Indians and Paleo Americans.
Okay. Uh, and that's a very good question. Being that I'm a student of history myself, for many, many, many years. The Paleo American is from archaeological evidence and from genetic evidence as well. Are those quote unquote proto Negroid or Negroid remains that have been found in the ground from North to South America, extending back very far in time? Like in Tennessee, you have the pygmy skulls. They've also found other remains of Negroid phenotype, like in Brazil, Louisa, Pinon woman, De Hoya Negro cave girl in Mexico. These people, if they were alive today, from the skull shape, the facial structures, the morphology, things of that nature, they would be classified as quote unquote African American, Black, Negro, those terminology. But these are the earliest remains that they're finding in the ground that resemble us primarily, who have been classified as African American today. Okay, now when you're talking about the Paleo American versus the Indian has been that's a very, very loose term, but what they call Indian today, if you look at the reservation, those people are a mixture of not only European but also the Chinese that had come over here during the railroad construction, as well as a mixture of what they would call the proto-Mongoloid. The proto-Mongoloid is the dark-skinned Asiatic Siberian northeast Asia that had also come over here around about maybe like 10,000 years ago somewhere. They were very, very, very dark-skinned people, melanated. Skull casing was not as long, brachycephalic, which means a short skull casing, wide face, epicanthal lipos, things of that nature. Very, very dark skinned, and their hair texture was very flank or loose. Those people that come over here, and there was a mixture between the two groups, which formed other subgroups. Like a lot of us carry, that DNA strand, that genetic strand of the Proto-Mongoloid, as well as the Paleo-American. And over time, through migrations of various other groups coming over here, you had the Phoenician, which Brother Nightwolf talks about in an interview, Carthaginian, Punic Iberian, Moroccans, those various groups that come over here. You had Sumerians that had come over here. There's been a gradual, even Mycenaeans, there's been a gradual interplay and admixture of various groups coming over here with the founding population. But what you see today on the reservation, a lot of those people are mixtures of the earlier groups, and some of them are just straight Europeans through adoption. And, there's a term, that classed as $5 Indian. But though that's the difference between the two. The Paleo American is AKA the American Aborigine. Those people who are of, like I said, the Proto-Negro phenotype, the Australoid, as well as the Negrito, Southeast Asians, Andaman Islanders, Formosans, which are people of Taiwan, the Papuan, people of Papua New Guinea, the Melanesians, all of those various groups of people, as well as earlier groups of people that they call the Negroid phenotype, and then the later groups, what they call Indian, have a basis of those other groups of people I told you about, the Proto-Mongoloid and the European and the Chinese and various groups of people. So that's the main difference.
Okay. Dr. Diarra, weigh in on that a little bit and follow up with what Brother ObaShango was saying.
It's almost hard for me to follow up with that kind of detailed explanation. And he said everything. I can tell you that just looking at it, playing with the genetic test, basically I can tell you that it only reconfirms what he's saying. He's breaking it down. What he's saying is documented in anthropological texts. And by the way, ObaShango-El, because of the kind of information he puts out, that inspired me to start looking at text. Because what he's putting out, you don't just find that in history books. You don't find that on Google. You have to really, really dig and read. And the information is there, okay? There's nothing that he's saying that he can't put his hands on sources. This can be backed up with multiple sources.
Right.
But I realize this is found in archaeological texts and anthropological texts. See, what happens is that our people go to the historians. The historians, they're like the doctors. It's like if you have a lesion on your body, something that looks abnormal, you go to the doctor, and the doctor does a biopsy and sends it to the pathologist. The anthropologist is like the pathologist. Their job is to report the information, okay? That's all they do. So if there's skulls, they're going to describe it, okay? They're going to describe its phenotype, and that's what it is, okay? That's the anthropologists have been found in terms of what's been found here. It's the historians that have not told the truth. So what he has done basically is he's gone behind the historians and he's gone to the text, the actual anthropological text, something they conveniently left out to find out the truth. And so basically with the DNA test that you have, the 23andMe, for example, everyone is showing up with this, let's say if you do the DNA test, I do the DNA test, and Toriano does the DNA test, it'll say a certain amount of percentage, which will be a huge percentage of sub-Saharan African DNA. But what you will notice is that if you are from the Americas, if your ancestry is from the Americas, the West Indies, North America, South America, why is it that we all have these tiny but detectable Southeast Asian trace markers? I mean, I personally haven't seen anyone who has escaped it. And this goes into what a Paleo-American is.
Yeah.
Because they'll tell you that's African DNA, but if you look at the Africans who participate in these DNA tests, and they are participating, they don't have these detectable trace markers, okay? I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm talking about what the actual test can detect, okay, in terms of what they report is considered significant. They do not have these test markers. So according to 23andMe, they'll tell you that they cannot report anything that's not detected within, I believe they said 6 generations, okay? So you have to ask yourself what was going on that all of our people are showing these tiny markers, whether it's 0.5, whether it's 0.2, whether it's 0.3. Why is it that we're all showing Southeast Asian? And many of us will show a certain percentage of Native American as well, but definitely we're all showing a small percentage of Southeast Asian. And
This is
that
true.
goes back into what he just mentioned, Australoid, okay, where he mentioned Proto-Negroid and Negrito. And that tells you that there was a movement, whether it was from here to there or there to here. There definitely was a common migration with those people that are currently found in that area, whether it was from here to there or from there to here. I mean, that can be debated, but we share markers with those people in the Pacific Islands and in Southeast Asia, which is really indirect proof that the population here in the Americas is not one that just came here. The black population is not one that just came here from the 1500s or 1600s. Okay, you can. How is it that everyone is showing up with these markers?
Right.
So I don't know if I'm really answering the question, because he actually answered the question beautifully.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to point out that that's another way of detecting it, if you can look beyond just what the test is saying.
You did a beautiful job. Now,
Yes, he did.
there is a movement now of, how should I say, a new movement. I say new because there are those of us who have been walking this red road, for like 20, 30 years, and better. And there's a new Aboriginal movement now within the past 5 to 10 years, and they're saying that DNA is not a valid way to prove Aboriginal ancestry. And also the tribes are saying the same thing. And I know, Dr. Diarra, when you did the 23andMe, when you went into 23andMe, you were able to find something that further validated the claim of DNA. Can you go in on that, and then I'll let ObaShango go behind you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And then first, let me give credit where credit is due. I credit ObaShango-El and Tyrone Lewis Cannon of Genetic Trust and Law Group first for giving me a lot of information and background. And then I went further and I did my own reading, and
Okay.
I started looking at the test. So I have to first give them credit for that, because I learned a lot of how to understand this DNA test from them. But let me just say,
Okay.
no, actually the DNA test reconfirms everything that we're saying, and it actually confirms, because what has happened is that the same way this information has evolved, and we're becoming more insightful as we look into anthropology, and it's showing the truth that we existed here in the Americas. What has happened is that DNA testing has also evolved, and they're using finer and finer techniques, because what they're not really owning up to is that they're using it now in tandem with the FBI. So there are finer techniques that they're using, something called short tandem repeats. They don't tell you that they're doing that, but they are. Now, I know our time is limited, so I'll try to hurry it up. With 23andMe, for example, and with Ancestry DNA and with many of the other companies, they're using something called ancestral informative markers. That's what determines, quote, that you are an African versus an Asian versus a European, and that's the basis of why they will say that we are Africans. Now, that's only a set of, let's just put it this way, I'm going to oversimplify, a set of DNA markers, okay, genetic sequences that we share in common with Africans. The same way Native Americans, the Asiatic Native American, the Mongoloid descendants, okay, they share certain genetic sequences in common with East Asians like Chinese, Japanese. Even though they are a distinct population, they do share that in common with them. So a lot of times there's cross reaction, and they cannot always distinguish a Native American from an Asian. A lot of people do these tests, and they will even tell you that. So it's the same thing with us. But then when you start using finer techniques like short tandem repeats, which is what 23andMe has done, okay? They kind of gradually incorporated it. When you go to something called the scientific details, and a lot of our people do not do that. There's a category at the heading called scientific details. And what happens is that I notice it doesn't matter who does this test. It could be someone from the DR, someone from any part of the Americas. If you have a substantial amount of this so-called African DNA, they will make most of your DNA, or at least 20-something% of the DNA, Nigerian, okay? So now they're throwing in these groups. And people just take that for face value. Well, when you go to the scientific detail and you click under the category of African, you will see that if your origins are in these Americas, none of it lights up. But I participated in it, and guess what? The only thing that lit up for me went straight across Ghana, and I did not tell them that I was half Ghanaian, and that is actually very accurate. And by the way, many Ghanaians participated in it, and I matched to them. They were my cousins. Okay? So this is very, very accurate. So I started looking at different relatives. I literally paid for many of my relatives to do this. Many of my patients have done it. They've handed over their information, and I look at their information. So I look at a lot of people's results, and many of them come from the Caribbean as well. Nobody is lighting up under the African category. Now, someone could say, well, what does it take to light up? Well, in an earlier interview I had with someone else, it looked to me like it was a minimum of 9%. I have now discovered a minimum of 5% DNA from any region is enough for them to say possible match. See, they have possible match, then they have strong match. My Ghanaian says strong match. 5% DNA out of the United Kingdom is yielding possible match. Now, the only thing that I'm seeing from anybody coming out of the Americas, who, if both of your parents are coming out of the Americas, barring any new ancestry, like maybe a grandmother who's Chinese or a grandfather who's from India, barring anything like that, what I'm noticing is that the only thing that's actually showing at least a possible match for our people is showing up in the area of United Kingdom when we're talking about people coming out of North America. They're not matching to anything. So you mean to tell me that someone can be 20 or 15% European, because these are the results that I'm seeing, but they are at least showing a possible match to the United Kingdom, but they are like 80 to 90% African, and I can't get 5% out of a West African region, not even Nigeria.
Wow.
And yet, everyone has this 20% something, 20-something percent, 30-something percent Nigerian category. So they are admitting that it's not even accurate, because once you go to the scientific detail, the Africans, or someone who's part African like myself, it's showing a strong match. And it is showing matches to the United Kingdom for those of us whose roots are out of North America.
That's deep.
It's showing a match for those who come out of Latin America who have at least 5% Spaniard DNA.
Wow, what you're saying there is that's incredible. We're down to our last minute and a half. We're gonna have to bring you back, and actually, I want to let Brother ObaShango have a minute to weigh in on that, and then we're gonna have to close out. But we're definitely gonna have to have a part 2.
Well, basically, she laid it all out, man, as far as the explanation of it not being accurate in regards to what the tribes are saying. A lot of people don't understand that culture dictates the tribe. Tribes do not dictate the blood. And this is what I've been saying for quite some time now. A lot of people don't understand, when you start calling yourself these various tribal names, you're going to find out that when you match them to what's being found in the ground, the earliest remains of these groups, that the language of these various names of these tribes do not date to the antiquity of what's coming out of the ground, what's being found by anthropologists. So that means that those names were actually brought here, pre-Columbian though they may be, but they do not match the antiquity in regards to the language and the age of the language of what's being found in the ground by anthropologists. So DNA is basically substantiating everything when we're talking about 40,000 years ago or better. There was a mixture of populations coming here. And then there were other empires and things of that nature coming here. So she laid it out pretty well. She laid it out very beautifully. So there's really nothing else to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence speaks for itself,
That's right.
And
not only that, if the FBI, let me say this, if the FBI is using it, all you have to do is go look up what's called Federal Rules of Evidence 702. And they also have the State Rules of Evidence 702. And it talks about scientific processes to prove, someone's claim in regards to a trier of fact. So once you come with these claims, DNA is used for paternities, maternities, rapes, murders, and estate. So when we're talking about land issues, we're talking about the first people of the land. And in law, it talks about what is first is true and what's first in time is better in law. And there's another one that says he was first in time is preferred in right. These are maxims of law. When we're talking about these things and we bring forth this evidence, there's really nothing that could, be used to try to even refute that. Because once you got the anthropological remains matching what the DNA is saying, then that's pretty much a hard case to beat.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I really appreciate the both of you joining us on the show. And like I said, just a half hour is not enough to cover this topic in its entirety. So we're definitely going to have a part 2, or really part 3, because I had you on the show a couple of times, Brother ObaShango, dealing with this topic. So we're going to have to close out now. And, I wish we had more time, but, there will be another, okay? Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, they hung up? Oh, okay. All right, so that's it. And we're going to close out with some music. Until the next time, do da da, gong hong e.